Doris Day truly hated him more than anyone, and what makes that hatred so shocking is understanding just how much she had already endured to get where she was. Before the glitz of Hollywood, before the bright lights, before the hit records and sold-out movie premieres, she was simply Doris Marianne Kopoloff, born April 3rd, 1922, in Cincinnati, Ohio. She grew up in a modest middle-class home during the harsh years of the Great Depression, a time when dreams were fragile and stability was rare. Yet even in those hard times, Doris shone. From an early age, she had an energy that drew people in, a spark that was impossible to ignore. But her dreams were not about fame or the movies. She wanted to dance, professionally. Dance was her first love, her obsession, the very core of her identity. She trained relentlessly, performing wherever she could, and soon she and her dance partner were winning local competitions. Her future seemed certain, bright, and thrilling. Then, in a single devastating moment, it all fell apart. A serious automobile accident shattered her leg, and with it, her dream. Doctors said she would never dance professionally. For a young girl whose life revolved around movement, the emotional impact was crushing. Her world had gone still, and she was left staring at a future she hadn't planned. But sometimes, fate works in strange, quiet ways. Confined at home, unable to dance, Doris began singing along to the radio. At first, it was simply a way to pass the time, but soon her family and friends noticed something extraordinary. Her voice, warm, effortless, emotionally rich. Singing something she had never imagined as a career was revealing itself as a natural gift. Encouraged by those around her, Doris started performing with local bands, slowly stepping into a new identity. One night, Barney Rapp heard her sing. He didn't just see talent, he saw a star. He advised her to drop the complicated surname Kopoloff and go by Day, inspired by her rendition of Day After Day. That simple change marked the birth of Doris Day the performer. Her big break came in the mid-1940s when she joined Les Brown's orchestra, putting her in front of national audiences during the Golden Swing era. Then in 1945, she recorded Sentimental Journey. It wasn't just a hit, it became an anthem. For returning World War II soldiers, the song was hope, reunion, and relief all wrapped into one. At the heart of it was Doris Day's voice, warm, honest, comforting. She wasn't just a singer anymore. Doris Day had transformed from a girl with a broken dream into a voice that gave millions of people hope, though the complexities and heartbreaks of her future were only just beginning. Hollywood didn't just notice Doris Day, it fell in love with her almost immediately. In 1948, she made her film debut in Romance on the High Seas, a role that might have seemed small at the time, but quickly became the launchpad for a career that would captivate generations. From the very start, she possessed something rare, a magnetic mix of beauty, warmth, and authenticity that felt instantly relatable. She wasn't untouchable or intimidating. She was the girl next door with a spark that made audiences root for her as if she were one of their own. Her charm wasn't just in her looks, it was in the effortless way she moved, spoke, and timed her comedy. Every gesture, every laugh felt instinctive, natural, and sincere. Audiences didn't just enjoy watching her, they trusted her, they cheered for her, and they saw in her both a reflection of themselves and the best version of everyday American womanhood. Through the 1950s and early 1960s, she had firmly cemented her place as Hollywood royalty, especially in romantic comedies. Her on-screen chemistry with Rock Hudson produced classics like Pillow Talk, 1959, Lover Come Back, 1961, and Send Me No Flowers, 1964, creating a style of romance that was witty, stylish, and endlessly charming. But what truly set Doris apart was her intelligence and subtle strength. Her comedic timing was sharp, her reactions precise, and beneath the sunny exterior of her characters, she often conveyed quiet independence and moral confidence. Even within the constraints of her era, Doris gave her characters dignity and agency, making her films not just entertaining, but meaningful. It's that rare combination of talent, warmth, and resilience that has allowed Doris Day's legacy to shine far beyond the golden age of Hollywood. Before Doris Day became the bright, radiant face audiences adored on the silver screen, she was already a force to be reckoned with in the music world, a true giant whose voice would define an era. Across decades, she recorded hundreds of songs, effortlessly moving between pop, jazz, and timeless standards. Her recordings weren't just technically brilliant, they were honest, pure, and emotionally open, carrying a warmth that could reach listeners' hearts instantly. Even as musical trends shifted and new stars rose, Doris Day's songs never lost their magic, continuing to resonate with generations long after their first release. There was something unmistakably real about her voice. Whether she was delivering a tender, heart-stirring ballad or a playful, toe-tapping novelty tune, Doris never sang for show. There was no exaggeration, no forced theatrics, only sincerity. That authenticity became the cornerstone of her appeal, not only as a singer, but also as a woman the public trusted and admired. Yet behind the glittering career and public adoration lay a personal life far more complex, a story of love, heartbreak, and resilience that unfolded through marriages that shaped her identity as a woman, a mother, and one of Hollywood's brightest stars. Her first marriage arrived sooner than anyone might expect. In 1941, barely out of her teens and stepping into the world of music and film, Doris married Al Jordan, a talented trombonist. The union began with promise and the excitement of young love, yet it quickly spiraled into turmoil. Behind the facade of romance, the reality was dark. Jordan was physically abusive, and Doris lived in constant fear, navigating an uncertain life with a small child. Amid the chaos, there was one shining light, her son Terry, who would forever be the center of her world. Faced with danger and instability, Doris made a courageous choice in 1943. She ended the marriage, putting safety and self-respect above appearances, and committed herself to building a life for herself and her son. It was a decision that demanded extraordinary strength, and one that would echo through the rest of her remarkable life. Doris Day's love life was never as picture-perfect as the silver screen made it seem. Behind her radiant smile and effortless charm lay a series of marriages marked with hope, heartbreak, and lessons learned the hard way. In 1946, fresh from a period of emotional turbulence, Doris took another chance on love, marrying saxophonist George Widler. On the surface, it seemed like a new beginning, a chance for companionship, stability, and a life rebuilt after years of personal hardship. But reality had other plans. As Doris's career skyrocketed at a dizzying pace, the demands of fame began to weigh heavily on their relationship. Grueling schedules, relentless public scrutiny, and the pressures of stardom exposed differences neither had anticipated. Despite their best efforts, the marriage slowly unraveled under the tension of two worlds colliding, one private, one public. By 1949, the relationship had quietly dissolved, not with scandal or headlines, but with silence, leaving Doris once again navigating life and love on her own. 2 years later, in 1951, Doris entered what would become the most consequential marriage of her life, wedding Martin Melcher. Unlike her previous husbands, Melcher would entwine himself deeply into both her personal and professional world. He adopted her young son, stepping fully into the role of father, and soon assumed control of producing many of her biggest films.
Together, they built the persona America adored, the radiant, wholesome sweetheart whose smile lit up movie screens across the nation. 17 years of marriage paralleled the peak of her fame, but beneath the glimmering Hollywood veneer, cracks had formed. Melcher's controlling nature, secrecy, and troubling financial choices slowly eroded their partnership. When he died in 1968, the marriage ended, but Doris faced a cruel surprise. Her finances had been mismanaged, leaving her to confront betrayal amid grief.
Still, she did not give up on love. In 1976, she married restaurant owner Barry Comden, seeking a quieter, more private life away from Hollywood's glare. For a time, it promised exactly that, but by 1981, the marriage had ended, marking her fourth and final union. Across 4 marriages, Doris experienced devotion and heartbreak, trust and disappointment. Yet she emerged resilient, devoted to her son, and defined not by romance lost, but by dignity in the face of life's trials. To the public, Doris Day and Rock Hudson seemed like the embodiment of Hollywood romance, sparkling chemistry, playful banter, and love stories audiences longed to believe in through hits like Pillow Talk, Lover, Come Back, and Send Me No Flowers. But behind the studio-crafted illusion, the truth was far more complicated. Doris's reflections reveal a tangled mix of admiration, hurt, and disappointment, a reminder that even the most perfect on-screen love stories often conceal shadows just beyond the camera's lens. Doris Day was known for her warmth, her discipline, and a kind of fierce professionalism that never wavered, even when the pressure was high. But more than anything else, she valued honesty. In an industry built on appearances, illusions, and carefully crafted images, honesty was the one thing she refused to treat as optional. When Doris spoke about trust, she spoke in simple, direct terms. "I believed in being straightforward," she once said. "If you didn't have that, you didn't have much." That belief shaped how she lived, how she worked, and how she chose the people she let close to her. And it was that same belief that made her eventual emotional break with Rock Hudson so deeply painful. On screen, they shared effortless chemistry, the kind audiences instantly believed. Off-screen, Doris came to feel that the friendship she thought they shared had been built on something that was never truly real. At the time they were making movies together, Doris did not know that Hudson was gay, a truth carefully hidden by the studio system that controlled every detail of its stars' public lives. When that truth finally became public years later, Doris was shaken to her core. And it wasn't because of Hudson's sexuality itself. That was never the issue. What hurt her was the secrecy, the long silence, and the fact that so many people had known while she had been kept in the dark. It wasn't what he was, she later explained. It was that everyone knew but me. To Doris Day, that realization felt humiliating. It made her feel like she had been placed inside a performance without her consent, turned into a piece of a carefully designed illusion meant to protect the studio's profits and public image. In her mind, she hadn't just been misled, she had been used. And the betrayal cut deeper because Hudson was not just another co-star. He was someone she laughed with, rehearsed with, worked beside day after day. He was someone she believed she truly knew. I trusted Rock. We spent years laughing, rehearsing, working side by side. I thought there was honesty between us. Discovering that the romance the world adored had been knowingly staged and that the truth had been hidden from her left her feeling manipulated, not by gossip or tabloids, but by the very people she believed were her friends. To her, this was not harmless movie magic. It was a violation of something deeply personal, her sense of integrity. As time went on, that hurt slowly hardened into resentment, especially as the public continued to romanticize their partnership. Fans still spoke about them as if the love story had been real, as if the fantasy on screen had somehow spilled into real life.
People talked about us as if it were real, and I had to smile along with it, knowing it wasn't. That forced silence, another unspoken rule of the studio era, became its own kind of cruelty. Doris felt trapped between protecting someone else's secret and carrying her own quiet sense of betrayal. And in her eyes, Rock Hudson, shielded by the system that created the lie in the first place, never truly paid the emotional price that she felt she had been forced to carry alone. What happens when sympathy collides with betrayal and neither one wins? That was the place Doris Day found herself in, still carrying the emotional weight of it all in silence. The truth continued to follow her. And when Hudson later revealed his AIDS diagnosis in the 1980s, Day's emotions didn't suddenly soften, they became even more complicated. On one hand, she openly supported AIDS research and showed genuine compassion for those suffering during the crisis. She understood the fear, the stigma, and the pain surrounding the disease. But on the other hand, she refused to rush into rewriting the past or pretending the betrayal never happened. "I was sorry for him," she said quietly, choosing her words with care, but that didn't erase what happened.
Those words revealed a woman who would not allow tragedy to excuse years of deception. To Doris Day, sympathy did not mean pretending everything was suddenly okay. It did not mean forgetting. And in private, she was even more honest about how deeply it had affected her. "I felt foolish," she admitted, "and I don't like being made a fool of." That single sentence explained why her feelings toward Hudson were so intense and so lasting. It wasn't hatred in the simple, dramatic sense people often expect. It was the kind of anger that comes from broken trust, from realizing that a partnership she cherished, both professionally and personally, had been shaped by secrets she never agreed to protect. It was the sting of knowing that what felt genuine to her had not been entirely real on the other side. And despite Hollywood's long desire to preserve their image as the perfect golden couple, Doris Day refused to romanticize what she actually lived through. "What you saw on screen wasn't my life," she said firmly, refusing to blur fantasy with reality. And it wasn't the truth. In the end, her harshest judgment was not aimed only at Rock Hudson himself, but also at the powerful system that encouraged lies, protected reputations, and demanded silence from those who were hurt in the process. Still, in her personal memory, Rock Hudson remained the face of that betrayal, the person attached to the pain, even if he wasn't the only one responsible. Doris Day lived long enough to tell her story on her own terms without softening the edges to make others more comfortable. And while history may continue to remember Doris Day and Rock Hudson as effortless, smiling cinematic soulmates, her own words tell a very different story. Behind the perfect chemistry and polished performances was a woman who felt deeply wronged, who never forgot the truth, and who, in her heart, never quite forgave what had been taken from her. What does it mean to live a life so full, so luminous that even in death the world pauses to feel the loss? Doris Day gave us that answer. On May 13, 2019, she passed away peacefully at the home she cherished in Carmel Valley, California, at the extraordinary age of 97, quietly closing the final chapter of one of the longest, brightest, and most beloved lives in American entertainment. Nearly a century of music, laughter, elegance, and quiet strength came to a gentle end. The cause of her passing was pneumonia, a soft and unassuming farewell for a woman whose life had been anything but ordinary, a life defined by warmth, resilience, and an unwavering spirit that carried her through triumphs, heartbreak, and the extraordinary demands of fame. The news of her passing did not arrive with flashing cameras or dramatic headlines. Instead, it was quietly shared by the Doris Day Animal Foundation, the charitable organization she founded and nurtured for decades. And in that choice, we see the essence of who she truly was. Even in death, Doris Day sent one final message: compassion matters, kindness matters. Standing up for those who cannot protect themselves was not a hobby for her. It was a mission, a lifelong commitment woven into the very fabric of her being alongside her legendary career. Long before her final days, Doris Day had made her wishes clear, reflecting the humility that guided her life. She requested no funeral services, no grave marker, no public memorials, and no grand ceremonies filled with speeches or formal goodbyes. No crowds, no spotlight one last time. Instead, she chose simplicity and privacy, believing that her life did not need rituals or monuments to leave a mark. She wanted to be remembered not through ceremony, but through the happiness she brought to audiences, the gentleness she showed to animals, and the timeless films and songs that continue to bring comfort and joy to generations who never even knew her in person. In turning away from public observances, Doris Day offered one final, deeply moving reminder of who she had always been. Despite worldwide fame, she remained profoundly private, a woman who believed love, laughter, and generosity spoke far louder than statues or plaques ever could. And though there were no public gatherings to mark her passing, the world mourned in its own way. Fans revisited her movies, replayed her songs, shared favorite scenes, and posted heartfelt tributes. Fellow artists celebrated not only the talent she displayed on screen, but the kindness and grace she carried behind the scenes. Doris Day's legacy never depended on ceremonies or headstones, and it certainly did not end with her final breath. It lives on in the warmth of her performances, in the clarity and beauty of her voice, and in the compassion that defined her later years away from Hollywood. Her passing was not a dramatic ending. It was a gentle farewell from an icon whose presence still lingers, quietly reminding generation after generation of a time when optimism felt natural, sincerity felt powerful, and grace was not just a screen image, but a way of living, both in the spotlight and far beyond it.